Hi everyone. Today we're going to do slope-intercept form. We're going to be looking at part 1 and part 2. We might not do everything out of both. We'll see how it goes. So slope-intercept form. It's a way that we actually write our equation, the one that we graph, and we've seen graph in these past couple of videos. But we're actually going to write it using y equals mx plus b. Hopefully you remember it from last year. Our m is our slope. Oh no, let me select the marker so I can write. All right, so m is your slope. It is always going to be in front of that x. X and y are like your, it could be like a coordinate if needed, or it's just what you're always going to have as x and y. Your b is your y-intercept. So remember that a y-intercept is where you cross your y-axis. Okay. Now, this is always going to be labeled as B. So I said it just a second ago while I was writing y-intercept, but this first blank is going to be crosses because your y-intercept is where the y crosses your y-axis. Okay, this is when x is 0. If you think about a graph, x is 0 whenever you cross that y-axis, and we'll look at a graph in just a second and I'll show you. You can have a possible horizontal line in a graph. That y value is constant, meaning you're always, if you looked at a table of values, you're always going to have that same number for your y's listed. Therefore, okay, horizontal lines like we're used to are going to be y equals. Okay, that's a slope of 0. If you want to write that down, your slope is always going to be 0 when you have a horizontal line. Now, kind of opposite, if you have a vertical line, then your x value is always a constant, meaning, again, if we looked at a table, it would show one number value for that entire table on the x side. So if we go to write that equation, it's a little bit different. It actually is going to start with x equals and then just be a number, okay? So we'll see that in just a second. Now, on these first couple ones, all we're going to do is write the equation. It gives us the slope. Let me change my color so you can kind of see it a little bit. So it says that a line has a slope of -9, and then it says a y-intercept of 2. So all we have to do is write it correctly. Remember, slope always comes in front of this x. It is always y equals mx plus b. So we'll keep that here so you can see it for all of these 6 problems. And then the y-intercept is 2. It is a positive 2, so we don't have to put anything else there. Okay, if you were given like a -2, as in this second example, it says a slope of 4.5 and a y-intercept of -10. Be sure you notice that -10 there. Okay, so if I go to write this, I'm going to put y equals, the slope is 4.5x, and then I could put plus a -10, but you will not see it written like that. If you had a multiple choice option, you'll just see -10. So if that y-intercept is a negative number, go ahead and make that a minus sign. Alrighty, so try number 3. Pause, turn it back on after you get it, see if you get it correct. All right, so for number 3, you should have had slope is -5. So y equals -5x. And it passes through the origin. So I haven't talked about origin in a while. Origin is actually the middle. So I could put plus 0. More than likely, though, you will see it as y equals -5x, and just that alone. You will not see the plus 0. Okay, this is more likely what you will see. Okay, they don't really tend to put the plus 0, especially if it's like multiple choice options. Alrighty. So number 4, 5, and 6, they just want you to do a little sketch. Okay, they give you the equation first, and you are going to go back and see which one is your slope, which one is your y-intercept. So if you remember that the slope comes right in front of your x, and your y-intercept is your b value. Okay, and it says graph a little sketch. We're not going to graph a little sketch. If you really want to know, it's probably something like this, because it's a negative sloping line. 3x, y equals 3x here on number 5. Okay, so that one kind of reminds me of this example up here. All right, so we do have a slope of 3, and our y-intercept is actually going to be 0. So I will draw this one just because we have a y-intercept that crosses right here at the origin, and it visualizes that example from number 3. So it's probably something like this, probably a straighter line that I can draw with this little device. Alrighty, so try number 6. Which one is your slope? And this is kind of tricky. You kind of have to remember back to if there's no number in front of x, what does it have in front of it? Okay. And you should have put a 1. If x doesn't have a number in front of it, remember it's understood that it is a 1 right there. Okay. And then your y-intercept, you have to take into account that operation sign in front of it. So it actually is a -5. It would be something like this, but a straighter line because I can't draw a straight line with this thing. All right, let's go to the next one. All right, so now they give you a couple of graphs and they want to know the same kind of information we've been doing. So the first thing I'm going to look at is my y-intercept. Where does it cross this y-axis? Because this is the y and this is the x-axis. So it hits at the 3. So that's what I'm going to fill in. I'm going to even come over here and I'm going to go ahead and write that in. So because remember, it's y equals and then the blank and then the x. So now we need slope. I'm looking for a good intersection point between these like kind of grayish lines. So like here and here, you notice how it intersects really, really nicely. That's what I'm going to kind of look for. And I can see it up here. I could have used these points. All right. But those intersect really nice. So again, rise over run. I can just count it. Goes up 1 and over 2. If you're looking at number 8, all right, we got our y-intercept way high up on our graph at 9. And again, look for a good intersection point. So I'm going to go ahead and choose this one. You've got to notice it is a negative sloping graph. And I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3. And over 1. Now, I will accept this, but more than likely, you're just going to see it written as -3 instead of -3 over 1. So for my equation, I really am just going to write -3x and then plus 9. All right, so try number 9 right here. Please pay attention that your y-axis goes by 2's. All right, I'm going to choose this point for my y-intercept and my next nice intersecting point right there. Okay, so slope. When you count up, be sure you go by 2's. Your run goes by 1's. It is positive, or is it a negative sloping line? Hopefully you said positive. The y-intercept, we did highlight that to help choose our spot, and it is -6. So if I go to write this equation, how about you write it? See if you get it correct. Did you put y equals 2/3 x minus 6? I hope you did. If not, change it. All right, so we have 3 more graphs, and I want you to do number 10 on your own. Notice that both the y and the x's go by 2's. Each one of them goes by 2's. I will help show you 2 points that you could use. Again, you could find your own points, whichever one helps you. Hopefully this helps you. Me kind of showing you. Remember to do rise over run, and remember you're counting by 2's. All right, I hope you said your slope was 2, 4, 6, 8 over 2. What is 8 divided by 2? 4. And then you got to ask yourself, wait, was it positive slope or negative slope? And it was a positive sloping line. Y-intercept was at 0. Our equation is y equals 4x. We do not have to put anything else behind it. All right, so 11 and 12 are examples of like on that very first slide that we started our video. Here's a horizontal line. If we have a horizontal line, I have a 0. Okay. And if I have a y-intercept, go look over here at the y-axis. Hopefully we know this is our y-axis by now, and this is our x-axis. It is at 7. All we have to write is y equals 7. That's it. We have no slope. Okay. You're not going to see it written as y equals 0x plus 7. Alrighty. So just ignore that last little bit. Now, with a vertical line, okay, we said that it's going to actually, our equation was going to be x equals, and we're going to look at where does that fall on our x-axis. Remember, this is our x-axis. So we're looking at this point right here, and it's at -6. Now, if you notice, I didn't look at slope and I didn't look at y-intercept. There is no y-intercept. So we're really not going to put anything there. Our slope is what we would call undefined. And I'm not going to write the entire word because there's not enough room, but usually a good rule of thumb is if you write UND, let me make that look like a U, and let me erase my horrible U. Okay. So UND, it stands for undefined, and that's what we're going to write there. All right. But the key thing is that it is x equals -6. All right, so part 2, this is when we use it kind of in a word problem, or they give us a table with information, and then we're going to kind of pull from that and write our equation. The slope that is represented in the table, we're going to find that just like what we did the other day when we used slope formula. The y-intercept, we can look, where does it cross, or when our x is 0? Remember that our x's are the left of the table, our y's are on the right side. So we got that one down. It gave us 6.25. That was very nice. We're going to put a $sign in front because it's talking about money. Now, when it tells us to write an equation, this will be our end of our equation, plus 6.25, because it is our y-intercept, and our y-intercept comes at the end of our equation. So now we need to figure out what was that slope. So I'm going to put 10 minus 6.25 and divide 1 minus 0. So I can put that in my calculator, and I get $3 or 3.75. Okay, so I'm going to write that right here in my equation, 3.75. Okay, go to Desmos, use your calculator. Okay, now, number 2 says that Carly wants to buy some fish for her room. Okay, it says that store customers can pay $12.50 for a fish tank and 20 cents for each fish they take home. The key word is each. That means to multiply. So the slope or the rate of change, that is what we're multiplying. So 0.20. That is our slope. And the y-intercept, this is that one-time fish tank fee, because you have to have a tank for your fish, so you're going to have to pay that $12.50. And if we write it in our equation, we just bring it all together. Y equals 0.20x. Each fish is your x plus your $12.50 fish tank. And my decimal didn't show up. Let me, $12.50. Okay. Alrighty, it's saying Betty's Bakery uses a chocolate chip cookie recipe that calls for a certain ratio of brown sugar to butter. So that is what our labels are on this graph, butter and brown sugar. Remember that this is your x-axis and this is your y-axis. It's asking us for the slope, and what does it actually represent? So you can choose the 2 points given to you. You can choose your own points that intersect really nicely on your graph. What I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to count the rise and the run. I'm going to, of course, look at my labels, see what they're going by. They go by ones and ones. So I have 1, 2, 3 boxes for my rise. 1, 2, 3, 4 boxes for my run. My slope is for every brown sugar and butter, it's going to be a ratio of 3/4. All right. So it's saying I will have 3 cups of brown sugar for every 4 cups of butter. Now, what is the y-intercept? You got to look at your y-axis, which is this big guy right here. And it intercepts at 0, 0, which makes sense, right? If I don't use any butter or any brown sugar, it should be 0, 0. I have yet to make my cookies. So a equation is I'm going to plug in y equals my slope 3/4 x, and that's it. Okay. Remember our y-intercept was 0 down there at the bottom. All right, so what if they give you a table and they say, hey, find me the slope and the y-intercept and the equation? So, lovely, right? The first thing I would look for, does it give me my y-intercept? Because that will make it a whole lot easier if they do. And they do. X is 0, so y is 6. So I'm going to come over here, start to fill in my equation. You can do the equation at the very end as well if you're totally confused. And I'm going to choose 2 points to use to find my slope formula. So I'm going to say 6 minus negative 0.25 over 0 minus negative 5. And I'm going to go to Desmos or my yellow calculator, and I'm going to type that in. It will give you, it might give you a fraction actually. If it gives you 5 over 4, that's fine. Since the table's in decimals, it is okay for us to write 1.25. And it is okay if you wrote 5 over 4, actually. That's okay, too. I'll take either. All right? So when I go to plug it in, I'm going to use my decimal because my table was given in decimals, and I've got to be sure I write my x. Okay? There's my equation. So if you look at this next example, this one is what you might get as well. If you notice, x is not 0. In this table, we don't have an x is 0. So I'm going to see if we can add in a little box, okay? So if x was 0, if you notice, it's counting by 2s on my x values. And what is it kind of going up by each time here? And that's what we're going to look at. And if you notice, 5 plus 50 plus something gives you 90. So it's adding 40 each time. So this is adding by 2, and this is adding by 40. So what is 40 divided by 2? Change in y over the change in x. You get 20 for your slope. Okay? So for every one thing, okay, for every one x, you're going to move up 20. So if I want a 0, I'm going to work down. So what is minusing 40 right here? So I'm going to minus 40. What is 50 minus 40? I should get 10. If I go to write my equation, I have 20x plus 10. Now, this is definitely harder when they don't give you that 0 value in that table, okay? And we're going to do a lot more of those later, all right? But try and work your way backwards. If you are given Desmos, there is a table function that in the graphing that you could type in a table. If you go up here and you go to table, the plus sign, and go to table, you could actually write in your x value and your y value, okay? And you could see where it would cross at the 0. A little more information than you probably wanted. But last question. Now they give us this big, huge, long paragraph. You're like, oh, I really don't want to read this, but let's go ahead and go through it little bit by little bit. So it says he's diving for rings at the bottom of his pool. Okay, and he is 8.7 feet below the surface of the water. All right, and if you're below and under, those are keywords for a negative. That is our y-intercept. So I'm going to put it right back here at the end of my equation if I were writing my equation. Okay, now we got to find the slope. He grabs a ring and he ascends 1.3 feet per second. So the per there tells you that that is multiplying, and that is actually our slope. So ascends is a plus sign. That's a positive word. Below is your minus or your negative word, okay? And so then it tells you which one's the x means this and the y means that, and we wrote our equation. So look at number 9, try and do it. Okay, if you need to, pause and see if you get it correct. All right, it says though, keywords, she has this already in her savings account. And then here's our plans to save $500 each month. Each is your keyword. I'm going to write my equation. You have 500x plus what she already has in her bank account. I am not going to write the comma, because sometimes people think a comma is like a period or a decimal point and they stop writing, or they think it's $12 and 350 cents, something like that, right? It's weird. Okay. If you have questions, contact me or Miss Hill.